Hi, I'm Ems, aka I'm Dark and Wings, and I'm a huge fan of the post-apocalyptic genre, whether it be in books, movies, video games, and so on. From zombie apocalypses to post-nuclear fallouts, I'm a fan of it. So it's no surprise I like the Last of Us franchise, and I'm a huge fan of miniatures, so I wanted to combine those two loves together in this diorama. So these are some bits that I've 3D printed. These are all done in resin, and first of all we've got a mini clicker. This is something I sized down. We also have a mini Joel and a mini Ellie as well. I also 3D printed myself. I'm kidding, it's just some trash cans. Yes, I am self-deprecating. So these are all done in 28mm scale. That's usually the standard for tabletop miniature games. I also 3D printed this car in resin. It's kind of a little bit pixelated, it looks like that Elon Musk car on the slide. The base isn't anything special, it's just literally cardboard glued together. My FDM printer is currently needing some repairs, so I couldn't print out anything for a base. So this'll do, you know, meet doing mend. So I'm going to add some realism to the base. I'm going to use this sandy paste from Vallejo. Get this stuff in most art supply shops, but you could also just use grout, you know, the gap filler type stuff for DIY. I'm using a little trowel here. I'm going to spread this out evenly. Basically, I'm trying to replicate the texture you would find on like asphalt or whatever it's called that would be on a road. So as I said, I'm a big fan of the post-apocalyptic genre, and I think a lot of people are. I think it comes from this romanticising the end of the world, a place with no laws and structures, no work, and you can start over and start society over. I also find apocalyptic worlds visually interesting. I love that The Last of Us shows nature taking back over, and in a morbid way it's like Mother Earth is healing from the parasite that was humans. Although The Last of Us isn't unique in this aspect, the video game franchise Gears of War coined the term destroy beauty. It definitely is an oxymoron in these settings, this mixture of decay and renewal. Now that the grate has dried, I primed it with black paint, and now I'm going to be dry brushing on a lighter grey. Dry brushing is simply where you load your brush up with a lot of paint, no water, wipe off the excess, and then it brings out the natural textures of the area you're painting. So we get quite rough and aggressive with this. It's a great technique for bringing out realism in terrain, and you can use it on small miniatures as well. I'm trying to replicate the textures which you would find on a road. Speaking of roads, Cormac McCarthy's post-apocalyptic tale, The Road, is a fantastic book and movie. The storyline does remind me of The Last of Us in some ways. Going back to the aesthetic of post-apocalyptic worlds, I definitely think The Life After People is a great documentary if you've not watched it. It shows cities and high-rise buildings collapsing over time and nature taking back over, and what would happen with animals. It's really worth a watch. If you like my new style of videos where I talk over and discuss a topic, let me know in the comments. Now on to the character models, starting off with Joel, Daddy Pedro. All of the models I painted black and then dry brushed some white over the top to bring out the details. Starting out with Deathwood Forest, and I'm painting his iconic shirt. So I'm decantering all of my paint onto this wet palette here. If you're watching this, you probably know what a wet palette is. If you don't, it's worth having a search on YouTube or Google. You can make them or you can buy them. Great way of keeping your paints wet and thinner. I don't put my paint usually more than halfway up the brush, because if it goes further into the brush, it can ruin it. It gets into the furrows or whatever it's called, and it destroys the brush bristles basically over time. I don't bother too much with that process with my crappy old brushes, which I use for terrain or whatever, but when I'm using my nice expensive brushes, I like to take care of them. Next up, I'm doing the jeans, so I'm just picking out a dark blue. This is a iconic colour, because this is the colour of Ultramarines from Warhammer. Next up, just grabbing a brown, so Monfang brown. I think what personally draws me to the post-apocalyptic genre is the human stories, the human aspect of it. What would people do to survive? Would there still be good people, or is it a morally grey situation? There are obviously going to be tough choices to be made, and would I personally be able to do them myself? I'm just painting the flesh tones here. I'm adding a bit of magenta to make it a bit more lively. There's a lot of great metaphor and satire in horror and the end of the world stories. George A. Romero, the granddaddy of modern zombies, he always tried to show a mirror back at society, and the zombies were always metaphors for what was going on in the world. It was never really about the monsters, it was about the people and how they would survive and what they would do to each other. So here I used the Agrex wash all over the clothes, and I'm just using this Gilliman's flesh tone washed down over the face and hands. Romero's third zombie movie, Day of the Dead, which came out in 1985, is often overlooked. It's a very grim movie, but it's fantastic. You can find the entire movie on YouTube. Going back to what I said about humanity in the face of overwhelming odds, I think The Last of Us really conveys that very well. Still love to be found, there's still societies which will rebuild and start again. You have to keep going, despite overwhelming odds. I'm mixing blue and ivory together and I'm dry brushing them over the jeans to make them look worn and tattered. Even in really horrible stories, like Harlan Ellison's I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, there is still hope and there's still kindness with the last act that the last party member does to save everyone else, but to doom himself for all eternity. So I'm mixing the flesh tone with ivory here, and I'm thinning it down to a glaze consistency. You can Google or YouTube glazing if you want to in more detail. I'm just picking the most prominent areas, so the forehead, the cheeks, the nose, the fingers. There's also this great element of dark humour when it comes to this genre. Laughing in the face of just absolute abject horror. I think Harlan Ellison does that very well in many of his short stories, which are often set after the world's ended or something horrible has happened. I also think the Fallout franchise does this very, very well. There's some great bits of humour in those games. So going back to the model, I'm a sucker for details, so I'm mixing this corn red with a bit of that flesh tone I did before, and I'm doing the lips. Going back to The Last of Us, I think there are some great moments of humour in it. I think the most memorable stories are the ones that combine the horror, the heartache, the happiness, the sadness, the humour of life, throw it all into a big blender. It feels more real. I'm being a savage here, I'm painting the eyes, so I'm just getting some ivory colour. And then I mix some black and brown together and I've put some dots there for the pupils, because I am a sadist. And this is pretty much Joel finished now. If you're still watching this and you enjoyed my rambling, please leave a like and comment and share and all that. I was starting on with Ellie. So this looks more like the video game Ellie. And I've done the pants in the same way as Joel's and the face as well. I'm using some Evil Sunz Scarlet here, so it's a reddy orange, and this is going to be painted over a top. And then after that I mix some black and blue together for the other parts of the t-shirt. I do find it a little frustrating that most After the Bomb stories are set in North America. Just painting the hair now, so I'm going for an auburn sort of colour. I would like to see more post-apocalyptic stories set in different parts of the world. However, Roadside Picnic, which isn't an American post-apocalyptic book, branched off and influenced the movie Stalker and the video games. It also inspired, in my opinion, Metro 2033, the books and the video games. It's a really refreshing take on the post-apocalyptic genre to have it set in a Soviet Russia type situation. And Ellie's pretty much finished here. Here I'm tackling the final character model. The Last of Us definitely has a unique take on the zombie genre. I'm starting off with corn red, mixing with a bit of flesh toe, and this will make the basis of the flesh for the clicker. The pants I painted in a similar style to the previous two models. I love zombie movies and zombies in media in general. Zombies in media is very much oversaturated, but they were oversaturated even before The Walking Dead became a big thing. Zombies are just a timeless subgenre though. So many different ways to represent them and to tell stories. Next up, I'm getting a little bit of orange and dry brushing that on top, just to give it a bit more of that clicker look, and then I'm using some Gilliam flesh wash to tie it all together. So there's the clicker done. Definitely a favourite of Papa Nurgle. So here I'm painting the trash cans. I just painted them in silver and then just did a few different colours to represent the trash going a bit mouldy. I have quite a lot of specialised weathering paints. Paints are usually quite highly pigmented with additional textures in them. It creates these rust effects which are really cool, but can get expensive. To be honest, you don't really need these. I just like having them because I'm a huge fan of weathering. You could just use normal paint or oil washes to get sort of similar results. I usually just use cheap brushes when using weathering paints. There's something super fun and cathartic about weathering. So here's where I got up to. It looks pretty cool, I think. However, I think it's lacking that overgrowth, that nature. So I'm going to add some lichens and some tufts. These are really cool. You can get these in a lot of different places. Here it is after I added all the overgrowth. I think it looks really cool. I also decided to add one last little thing. This is a barricade which I 3D printed a while ago, and I drew the firefly symbol on it. Let me know what your favourite post-apocalyptic things are in media, books, movies, etc. And if you made it this far, as always, thank you for watching. Remember to enjoy your hobbies for yourself, respect that other people enjoy them in their own ways, and at the end of the day, they're just war dollies. I'll see you in the next one.